evening, really, and then tomorrow lunchtime. I'm Ben Colson-Juris, and joining me in the commentary box, especially that race weekend that we had at Paul Ricard. You may remember the second race was interrupted by rain for growing, and we have a few cars starting to make their way onto the circuit nice and slowly. Not a massive flood of them, though.
No, I'm just wondering here, because the clock hasn't started either. Now, are these cars meant to be on the circuit? Are these cars being allowed from the paddock round to the pit lane? But there is a plan. So for why the clock hasn't started, I am slightly in the dark. However, as Ben rightly says, it's not a merely shine, but it also allows drivers to have more track time. It gives you a more endurance feel, because we've only ever really had these 1 hour races, and quite often, whisper it, they're interrupted by yellows or safety cars.
And they're certainly approached in a sprint way, aren't they, by all the drivers.
Yeah.
It is not a case of cruising around. Qualifying, and that second driver will start the second race. So this sets the grid for race one. We have an onboard camera this weekend in Antoine Potty's Super GT4, a car that was making a wonderful noise yesterday as it came up through Radiant and Eau Rouge.
Yeah. And so now at the end of this next lap, times we shall start to see.
And it was interesting in Paul Ricard, that second race, because those cars that have balanced, and remember all of these different marks have been balanced in different ways, the cars that were balanced to be higher, to be given a minimum ride height of quite high entry or retired. 2 retirements this year, and then 2 away from the endurance calendar year, Hockenheim in Catalonia with the Endurance Championship. Michael Schrey made the debut of this team, Bonk Motorsport, in the middle of last year, having won the German Championship the year before, came in and instantly found himself at the sharp end at Hockenheim, and then continued for the rest of the year, and now sits at the head of the GT4 standings. Schrey sharing that car with Gabriel Piana, Hoffer by Bonk, so 2 well-known BMW brands that also run in what is like a one-make.
Lap times being disallowed, so sometimes you see an order and you think that's good, and then it suddenly changes, and it's not because other people have gone quicker, it's because somebody's lap time has been taken off them.
For an opportunity to qualify if they can fix whatever the problem is.
Yes, that's true. Now, Irish is in the traffic here in the Racing Spirit of Le Mans Aston. So there's another wave of it up the road as he comes towards the chicane. 5th fastest currently is the Aston Martin. Big effort being made in the background, look, by the Audi, the highlighter pen, yellow Audi, which then decides that that's really not a good idea, and instead of trying to get past the traffic, let's lag back and let the traffic get away. But I don't necessarily think Irish is going to improve on that lap, because the middle sector was a pretty slow one.
Plenty of traffic to contend with, not really much space around the circuit to find a clean lap, especially when everyone's slightly on different strategies. You can't push these tyres in qualifying spec all the way through the 20 minutes, so you do have to either do push laps and then slow them down, try and calm the rubber down, or indeed do a couple of push laps if you've got the clean lap and then come into the pits. So we do see in these qualifying sessions people kind of ending their session 5 minutes early because they know they've got the best out of the car and the tyre, and that then, if you find yourself in traffic, you end up slightly compromising the very best of laps. Alpine, slightly smoky at times, I think. Maybe just my eyes. Antoine Leclerc aboard that car, and they are our Pro-Am, well, they were our Pro-Am leaders last round. I think they have stayed ahead in that championship.
In Pro-Am?
Yeah.
I thought they dropped to second, 10 points behind Gilbert and Christophe Hamon. But we know that car is quick. I think it's a great shape, that Alpine. It looks modern, and yet all the echoes of the original Alpine are in there. And we've seen how competitive the car has been for a number of seasons. Antoine Leclerc at the wheel of it then, and 4th fastest, as you see. And
this is another track where the French Championship will visit. So like Paul Ricard last time, the French teams, and obviously GT4, as I keep saying, is the national championship in France. They don't have a GT3 championship in France, and so GT4 is the top spec. They race at Paul Ricard, they usually race here at Spa-Francorchamps. So there's data that the teams have which is instantly transferable into the European series.
And Greg Gilbert has been around here so many times, he knows exactly what he's doing. We've got a yellow flag out, though, in that middle sector, which now has been rescinded because the car has got going again, so the road goes green. And Gilbert here has not only, of course, been the fastest, he's also managed to buy himself quite a lot of clear space, hasn't he? So there's no traffic around at the moment to get in the way.
Audi strong in practice as well. Porsche in practice 1, but it was a slightly damp practice 1, whereas drizzle-free practice 2 was the Audis, and Santelok being a French team, champions last year in both French and European, and Gilbert aboard that 42 machine. Wouldn't expect to see that car as high up in the second session when Amon gets aboard, but Christophe Amon, one of the very best AM competitors that we have in this championship.
Yes, absolutely right. Very, very successful, whether it's in this or in French GT. We understand that number 7 is slow on track, which is the Mirage Racing by MB Performance Aston Martin of Loic Merrick.
Yeah, 5th fastest as well, so
yeah,
at least he's got a decent lap time in if he's either got an issue or he's spun. And we assume, therefore, that the yellow flag was for him. Up to speed again, says the race control. So a bit of clearing of gravel. He's back going again. Now, we need to do a little bit of digging because we have only seen 60 cars on track. As I said, Parisi's still in the pits, but there is 61 on our entry list. So one such missing, potentially.
Number 9, the Racing 1, Andy Lee, Todd Harriott, Aston Martin, the 2 American drivers, is the one I can't account for. And there's a query over number 13 because the entry list says that Ivalio Tsvanev will go first, the Bulgarian, but it is Joachim Bolting whose name appears on the screen. And whether that's a transponder glitch or they've changed, I can't tell you, but number 13 is the one with a question mark over the driver. Alexander Hartvig, though, is looking quick in the Allied Racing Porsche, the Cayman, the 718 iteration, and comes slightly sideways into the chicane. Hartvig then 11th with an absolute best in the middle sector, in the first sector, forgive me, lost out in the middle sector, and an improvement beckons then as he comes up towards the timing line, but it doesn't count because he was slower in the third sector as well.
And the one very thing that we learned in Paul Ricard will be the same here as well. You call these laps to the line, you get excited about a super fast lap, and then race control go bing.
Yes, there's that.
Especially as one of the main places they are watching is the Eau Rouge Radion section. 4 wheels off at the top of the hill there is an instant deletion of time, but you can only delete the time once you get to the end of the lap.
And also, that corner they've just come out of, Speaker's Corner, is another one that's being monitored, and the chicane. Of course, it's a feature of modern circuits. Low curbs, because motorbikes have to race on them as well. Tarmac the other side for Formula 1. It invites people to push that little bit more. They've got the room to go wider. But yes, the chicane certainly is another place that is being monitored. And we've pretty much filled our message screen now with cancellation of laps, haven't we, Ben?
We are in a much better situation than we were 2 years ago here at Spa, because whilst they obviously built that massive grandstand overlooking Eau Rouge and Radion, they also did put a lot more gravel traps in. All this area here, which I like to call Stavelo, it's not actually officially called Stavelo any longer, that used to be tarmac. That used to be able to run nice and wide out of there. Now the gravel trap stops you from doing that. The same actually at Speaker's Corner, which is also not called Speaker's Corner any longer. It's called Jackie X.
Yeah, yes.
But this is one place here on the exit of Blanchimont where you can still run on to the outside and 4 wheels off. But it's much better than a couple of years ago in terms of track layout.
It is, and the track limit rule, certainly for the GT3 cars, is the FIA rule, which means that at least one tyre must be in contact with the white line. But let's not get too bogged down in track limits. We might have to think about that in the race. But for now, just wallow, because for many, many years, GT4 was a bit of a slow burn. Now, there are cars everywhere, and it's become massively successful, not only in this European series, but it's the French GT regulation, Scandinavia, very successful in America. It's big business in the UK. There's a class within World Challenge Asia, and I'm bound to have missed somewhere. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's popular in Germany. It's become a hugely successful thing. It took a while, but when it clicked in, it's really taken off.
A great stepping stone into GT3, or indeed a place where you could just make your living and become an expert GT4 driver. Gus Bowers back in the championship. We saw him alongside Konstantin Latnauer last year in an Aston Martin, and he is in an Aston Martin once more. But this is the first time we've seen him this year.
And 33rd he is at the moment. This car, the Newbridge Motorsport entry. Oh, now there's track limits for you. That's one way of getting out of the way.
I'm trying to remember if Newbridge were in an Aston Martin at round 1. I have a feeling they weren't. They were involved in that horrible accident underneath the banking at Monza when we had a full course yellow and not everybody responded at the same time.
Right.
And the car was effectively written off at that point. Maybe it wasn't Aston Martin.
Newbridge one associates with Aston.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But, I'm not disputing because you were there. Gaspars has been a race winner in McLarens as well as Aston Martins. We know he's quick. Comes out of La Source then. This session has got 4 minutes and change on the clock. So as there into the pit lane is the car that is 14th fastest, the Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden entry of Emil Skaras to give way to Hans Holmlund next.
Yeah, and that car was incredibly fast last time in Paul Ricard as well, where the Scandinavians joined us for the first round of their championship, and they were miles ahead of the rest in qualifying. Remember, they have a race within a race here. The Swedish Championship or the Scandinavian Championship will be scoring points for themselves, and whilst they are on the spread out inside the grid of the GT4 category, they don't take points away from our European Championship contenders, and they score their own system of points. Now, I think I remember that car basically leading most of race 1 until having an issue right at the end of the race, but was miles ahead of the rest of the field. The other one that was particularly spectacular, which we will see a bit later on, the McLaren of Alfab 288, has some good liveries. That's got a very good, always had a good livery, kind of a Colin Chapman Lotus black and gold livery with weirdly a British flag on the roof. Even though they're in a Swedish championship. And the British flag indicates the McLaren in which they're driving.
204 is the Otto Racing, Otto Gullberg, Daniel Nilsson Porsche. And that blasts through now, that car being another of the Scandinavian championship cars, and for them perhaps more important to gain some mileage. The Mercedes AMG there. Cutto Rouge, that will be a track limit drama, but it's on a slow lap anyway.
Yeah, they were more getting out of the way, wasn't they? Look how many are now in the pits. They started about 5 minutes before the end of the session. They were all happy that they'd done their best. The top 6, all French drivers. Look at that. Gilbert, Brichet, Lariche, Leclerc, Merrick, even though they had that issue halfway around the lap. And Victor Veyrick, part-time ski instructor from Chamonix and part-time racer in the... It works quite well, actually. Summer racing, winter skiing.
But there are winter GT championships now.
Well, yes, I suppose so.
A Porsche winter series that has comparable cars. The one-mate Cayman, for example, can race in that. But now it's a case of getting your next driver in and ready. The WAS Motorsport car of Hendrik Still and Max Kronberg is there. Now, they're two quick drivers. So Hendrik Still's 7th. Max Kronberg will do Q2. It's one driver, one session, one grid. So what we have here will determine the grid for today's race. And as Ben was suggesting earlier, the second driver in will then qualify for the second race. And quite often we have very different looking grids, certainly amongst the Pro-Am cars.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have the Pro driver in for one session and then the Am driver in for the next session, it mixes things up. Plenty, obviously, of silvers where you can nominate basically which driver does which session. And there is no regulation that sets the grid. We've still got a couple of cars out there, probably about 15 or 20 machines still circulating, still trying to get laps in. Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden and kind of a national works entry for the 229, and that's down in 59th position. So that's the, I was about to say the last time set, but actually the AGS 89 car is now on circuit. So Mike Parisi, having spent 9.5 minutes in pit lane, is now out on track. So he's going to be one that's going to be going all the way to the flag. Where is he on the tracker? Coming through Blanchimont right now. Certainly one to watch. Although you wouldn't expect him to trouble the top 10, Parisi will certainly do better than last.
You'd have thought so. Massively experienced, isn't he, Mike Parisi? So has he got time in which to do anything? Even one banker lap gets him up from the 30th row of the grid, which would be a good thing. So
there we go.
He
there
does
he is.
go through, but only to 55th in the times, Mike Parisi. But he will squeeze one more lap out of it. So this could be the most important lap of the last 20 minutes.
No evidence to suggest what the problem was initially with that car, physically from the exterior. As I say, the AGS, I'm always going down to their awning to ask what the matter is. I feel like the person with bad luck carrying over and go.
Do you go with your black hat and
Yeah.
the size?
I send a cat first. Black cat. It's
sweep up the broken mirror.
It's such a shame. And AGS have links to the ex-Formula One team from the 1980s. I was not born.
Yeah, the very late 80s, yes.
Yeah, and actually still own some of the race cars that they previously raced in the Formula One World Championship.
I should be able to remember what AGS stood for in those days, but the only person that could remember it and pronounce it correctly was your father.
Yeah, and he would be able to tell me if he was listening.
Yes,
that's
yes.
for sure. But they do still have a lot of Formula One cars, and you can book to drive with AGS events around various French circuits.
Well, Mike Parisi has done a personal best in the first sector. Bearing in mind it's only his second flying lap, that's not quite as whoopee as it might sound. But the point is that this should be an improvement up from 55th on the grid. Everybody else is pretty much now taking the flag. And, of course, there are hardly that many cars out there anyway of the 60 that we've got in the session.
He had a funny old moment going through the Bruxelles downhill right-hander. The rear end broke away, but only just for a few seconds, almost like he locked the rears and then it snapped back in to gripping again, but then sent him wide. So it's not going to be the best time he was able to do. But yeah, curious body language from the car going through there.
Automobile Gonfroneries Sportive is my nearest stab at it. But, gosh, that takes you back a long, long, long time to... They were very good in Formula 2, AGS, with Richard Dallest and others, but not that very accomplished in Formula 1. Anyway, to the plot. So drivers now switch over, ready for Q2, and at the end of Q1, Greg Gilbert, fastest outright, but also, of course, topping Pro-Am from Antoine Leclerc. And has Mike Parisi taken the flag yet? No, not quite. So he's still out there, coming into the chicane, so he's imminent, as also, in fact, is number one, the Constantin Thiers, Stéphane Lemeray, Toyota, with Constantin Thiers at the wheel of it. Mike Parisi breaks the beam.
One position gained.
Gains one place, does he? Right up to 54th.
The other improver was the Kenny Harriman's Camaro, which was sitting in 44th. That went up to 38th position on that last attempt. And we're just finally waiting for the McLaren, the Alphab McLaren I was telling you about a bit earlier. That hasn't yet taken the flag. Whereabouts is that on the track? It must be quite early on in the lap, actually.
Which one are we looking for?
The 288.
There are two cars going down to Bruxelles together.
It's a long old lap, isn't it?
There are 6 cars on track and 2 of them are nose to tail. So even with only 6, you've got somebody that can moan about traffic here. But it is a long old lap, you're right. You should try running it now.
No. I have walked it once, and it's longer. If you take the path around the outside, it's a lot longer than the racetrack.
But you can, if you do that, stop at a bar somewhere, I think,
Oh, is there?
in a karting centre. Right, there are still 1 or 2 cars to take the flag, I think. But anyway, as far as Q1 is concerned, Greg Gilbert is the man who tops the times from Julien Brichet and then Benjamin Lariche. 4th quickest, Antoine Leclerc from Loic Merrick, and then 6th fastest was the car of Victor Weyrich. 7th fastest, Hendrick, still ahead of the British driver Jack Mitchell. 9th, Mikhail Schrei, and Alexander Hartwig in 10th. Pro-Am then, topped by Greg Gilbert and Christophe Amon. The best of the silvers, Julien Brichet, 2nd fastest, and then 28th is where you find Laurent Hergon's car, that the best of the AMs, effectively the bronze-graded drivers. And who topped Scandinavia? It would be Eric Skaras in the Toyota, 14th overall. So that's the first half, but there are plenty more as we are 5.5 minutes away from getting Q2 underway. So Spa in the sunshine, ready to welcome the cars once again, and getting track position will be absolutely crucial.
Got to remember also that Scandinavia is also divided into 2 categories as well, although it's not, I don't think, denoted on the car graphics, but they do have an AM and a Pro-Am category within that championship. So we've got 5 different categories to follow when it comes to racing.
So the podium's going to take a while, is what you're suggesting?
Because they'll be got somewhere else to be.
Yeah, quite. There'll be podiums for the Europeans and a Scandinavian podium as well. But the pit lane then gets busy. Driver change. Good news is that we didn't seem to have any real drama in that. No cars in gravel and so no damage to be repaired. Just like question mark over Mike Parisi's car. So let's have a quick look at the highlights then of Q1 with everybody pouring out onto the circuit trying to find clear track space early on. Mikael Schrei in the BMW running wide at the comp. Others went even wider, not only abusing track limits but peppering the circuit with gravel in the process. Benjamin Lariche was a driver early on that offered up a decent time but then got caught up in traffic, and Antoine Potti in the Toyota was hard at work as well, trying to navigate clear track space throughout the session. In the number 24 JSB Aston Martin, Julien Brichet was rapid and put himself to second, but it was this Audi of Greg Gilbert that topped the times and will therefore be on pole position at the end of Q1, ready for race 1 later today. You see the chicane at the end of the lap with this very, very tight first part. It almost loops around on itself, and it's also, as you can see, slightly uphill as well. You tend to think of chicanes as being flat, but nothing at Spa is flat. Even the downhill bit is steep. So the cars do have a slight climb, and then, of course, if you run out wide there, you undo all the good work because you get your lap pinged for the dreaded track limits. So, now that we've seen the cars, put a different driver into them and go again, but it's going to be another wide open session, this, I would have thought.
Absolutely. A brand new set of drivers. That's fascinating about GT4 when they are in race conditions, that you have a grid set, you have a kind of an order, and then it gets completely ripped up and started again when those second drivers jump in. Obviously, Silvers will have the silver category cars, but for our Pro-Am categories, we will have AM drivers aboard, and for the AM drivers, we will, of course, have the second AMs. Interestingly, that after Paul Ricard, there are a couple of drivers under investigation for their gradings.
Right.
Because it's been seen that they are potentially faster than what their grading suggests. So for your AM drivers who are potentially going faster than a bronze should go, they are being investigated to see whether they should actually be categorized differently, and that will, I mean, that's a big headache for a team, especially mid-season, to suddenly find yourself either racing in a different category or needing to find a driver to change a driver to fill the team to keep yourself in, let's say, Pro-Am, if your AM driver is too fast to be an AM anymore. So that is a little sub-story that's going on here this weekend in GT4. The other one, of course, just a quick shout out whilst we have a bit of downtime, is Rafa Racing Club, our brand new sponsor, which is a Texas-based racing club based at COTA, where you can go and race a variety of road cars as well as race cars. And Rafael Martinez, who is the boss of that company, I suppose you call it, he is new to competitive racing, done lots of track days, but is racing in the McLaren Trophy. His first ever race was in Paul Ricard a couple of weeks ago. Found himself in my hotel. I think he thought that Ibis was a posh brand in France. He did admit that he had made a mistake when booking his hotel, but
so he bought it, did he?
Yeah. So now he's got himself involved with GT4 as the title presenting partner, both for the GT4 race and also for the Pro Sim race, which is where we have the Pro Sim one or the Sim one? Pro Sim, which is where we put the real drivers into the Sims and racing.
Right.
No, the other way around. The Sim one, where we put the Sim drivers into our rigs in Fanatec and race them, which is the new addition to our Sim championships this year. It does confuse me, the different names this year. Now we've got 2 championships, but that's a different story.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
Thank you very much to Rafa Racing.
Indeed, I was going to ask you to explain it, but it's just easier to go back to GT4, I think, and wallow in the Toyotas. The Supers, they make a great noise. These are the 3-litre versions. There is a 2-litre variant as well. Mikael Brunhagen is ready to go. And there's a right old traffic jam of cars, as you've already seen at the pit exit. Of course, with the size of the grid that we have, both pit lanes used, and therefore, like for the 24 hours, the CrowdStrike 24 hours of Spa, you link the two together. Green flag waved, and this time the clock does start, in fact, as they leave the pit lane rather than around the circuit. So that's going to slightly eat into the number of laps they can do. However, we are in business, and out they go. Start engine, driver ID has to be in the right place, reset the fuel, and then you are going to be allowed away by the team. That's your to-do list if you sit in the car, and that is being offered to Etienne Kelly aboard number 8 Toyota Supra. Out he goes.
One driver we will see again in this session, just one driver doing double bubble, is Aaron Veruti for a second time. Last weekend, the excuse was, or I say last weekend, the last time we were racing in Paul Ricard, the excuse was that Julien Piget was involved at the test day at Le Mans, couldn't be part of his team. I don't know, well, that's not happening this weekend, and he is still not here, so Veruti having to do both Q1 and Q2 and do the full 2 races.
Now, when that happened for, was it Bob Herber 2 or 3 years ago, he had a longer pit stop.
Yep.
Same again?
Yeah, has to get out of the car though,
okay,
and get back in, and has a 15-second penalty or added on to the time of the pit stop.
Which is?
Haven't got that far yet.
Right, okay.
Get there for race 1.
Okay, splendid. Yeah. That was the quiz question.
There is about 75 notices that need to be gone through before we get to race 1.
Okay.
Give me half an hour.
All right, okay. And for race 2, there'll be even more.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Sleep well. Yes, the stewards are terribly busy. They're not all on track indiscretions, and some can be as straightforward as being ever so slightly above the pit lane speed limit. It doesn't mean that they're all horrendous offences, but the stewards have been very, very busy indeed. Now, 89 that we were talking about in the context of Mike Parisi now goes to Nicolas Gomard. There, turning through Pouhon, the Elite Motorsport run McLarens, so Tom Emson and Alex Denning now become the drivers. Elite Motorsport, if you follow British motor racing, you'll remember with great success from Genesis. I think it was Elite that ran Harry King with great success, now leading Porsche Super Cup, and has also moved into single-seater racing of late in the GB3 single-seater championship in the UK, Eddie Ives' team, but coming to GT4 European Series this year and doing a very good job.
Interesting to see that Alex Denning is now aboard that McLaren, having been part of Newbridge on the first round. It was actually Alex who was involved in that accident in Monza in the Aston Martin. So we had Creasy aboard that car for race 1 in Monza. We then found Jack Mitchell, who was in this for the second race. No, that's not correct. My Wikipedia page is wrong. Because Michael Creasy was not aboard that car in Paul Ricard, and Alex Denning has now taken over alongside Jack Mitchell, but it's the other car that is the slightly faster overall.
Okay.
Great to have McLaren represented in the championship, because we have a lot of Aston Martins, we have a decent amount of Mercedes and also Porsches, but we don't tend to see lots of McLarens. 3 this weekend, 2 from Elite, and then the 1 from the Scandinavian Championship.
Yes, we've moved on quite a lot from the GT4 lights of years ago, where you had the KTMs and the Donkervorts in, but of course part of this was when manufacturers started building cars, and it was Porsche that was the catalyst for it, because they wanted to make a Cayman and call it a GT4, because they had a GT3 car and they wanted a GT4, and then they noticed that the copyright for GT4 was held by one S. Rattel. So they got in touch with Stefan and said, we'd like to use the GT4 brand. What are the chances? And Stefan said, well, yes, but why don't you build a car for GT4? That would be a really good idea, wouldn't it? And Porsche agreed and started building them and started selling them. And all the other manufacturers quickly thought, flipping heck, there's a market there. Let's build a GT4 car. And it really took off. So that's Gabriele Piana, and that is a red flag, I rather fear, because sitting in the gravel trap in 298 is Joachim Walder in the BMW, and the red flag is shown, and that was up at Les Combes, wasn't it, on the exit of Les Combes, and there's no way that's going to get out of there. It's a funny place to find a car, that.
Especially in that position, directly head on to our camera position.
And early on as well.
Very early on in the apex, so, and almost as though he's been tagged into that.
Possible, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm sure our wonderful camera crews out there will have got something of, even if it's just being sprayed of gravels. There's a lot of gravel on the track, and it shouldn't be too hard to get him out of there because the gravel trap's not too deep or too big.
But first of all, we've got to get everybody back into the pit lane, and then you can send the marshals out, and then you can get the recovery vehicle, and then the car either has to be taken to a safe place and or allowed to drive back. If you wonder what a red flag waved majestically looks like, that's your answer.
Fantastic technique from the flag waver.
And multitasking, still holding a radio, listening to messages.
It's amazing that when we have these celebrity flag wavers at various events around the world, they haven't had the training to just simply wave it in a figure of 8. Has he just got a little bit excited on the throttle? He has, but he's kind of half caught it. Oh wow, okay.
A bang, and that's what tipped him round into the... That's quite a moment, that. And Joachim Wilder is not inexperienced either. So, yes, as you say, he was caught out, cold tyres, a bit too much of the right foot. And
my imagination had definitely not driven that mistake. I thought he was coming from a lot later in the corner.
You also see the type of gravel. You might think gravel is gravel, but these aren't tiny little stones. These are like small rocks.
And I think there is now an FIM, so the equivalent to the FIA, but in motorbikes speak, that has a specific type of gravel that they need to use for their championships. And of course, many of the gravel traps placed around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit last year was for the 24-hour bike race that was held a few weeks ago. And so the gravel has to conform to stopping bike and human from getting to the barriers. There's a nice close-up of how the recovery system works. The bar supplied by SRO with all the different fixings for the different cars. Rather than trying to wrap it round a tyre and wrap it round a rim and all the underside of the car, just clip it into the roof. The red harness for a different type of vehicle. And look at that. The only problem with this is that, of course, many of these cars are not 50-50 in terms of their balance and weight distribution. So that happens where the front goes down.
But it's far, far better, this method, than pulling it out of the gravel and watching splitters come adrift and rear wings. I mean, it used to be the case, didn't it, that I think back to super touring days in touring cars, that if a car needed retrieving, it might still happen in Formula 1 even, that an engineer goes out with the recovery team to supervise it, to say you want to attach it here and you want to be careful, don't pull that too hard, and supervise the lift almost. Anyway, the lifting points, as you say, in the roof easily allow the car to be plonked back on the road. It's a bit battle scarred, but the driver is still in there ready to drive it back. Joachim Wilder having taken it over from Victor Bouveng, who used to be a quick Audi TT Cup racer, and that car I think actually will be able to drive back. It might need a bit of a tweak on the suspension, but largely it's all good.
Race control will be onto the team to tell the driver to stay offline, to make sure he doesn't distribute too much gravel when driving back to the pits, because especially going sideways across the gravel trap there, he has collected a lot of gravel on the exterior points of the car. We can see that on the splitter, but also into the brake ducts and the calipers. There's nothing worse than one of those stones getting caught between disc and pad and making a horrible noise all the way back to the pits. You know you're doing so much damage every time you touch the brake, but you just need to touch the brake, otherwise you're not going to slow down. We should be able to get the cars released, I reckon, relatively soon.
Okay, so...
Automotive, no longer turquoise.
No, I think the turquoise look better. That's a bit anonymous, isn't it?
I wonder why that is, whether they've... one of their turquoise machines has had some damage. That's one to go and investigate once we get a moment. It was Berke Bessler who was the star of the wet shod competitors in Paul Ricard. He was the first very early on to change from slicks to wets. Remember, with the 5 studs, it takes a long time. It's not a simple, easy one bolt and then the new tyre goes on. You've got to take 5 studs off, take the tyre off, put a new tyre on, and they had to do that 4 times, which cost them about 3.5 minutes. So you did need to be a lot faster to gain that time back, especially having gone through the pits. And we reckon that Berke Bessler was within a lap of winning that race.
Right.
It was having lost almost 5 minutes in the pits in total, changing to wet tyres. He was then very much the man on the move when others couldn't really activate their tyres. The Porsches, for instance, who reacted early, they just couldn't get the wet tyre working in the same way. But Berke Bessler was spectacular Ultimately, though, Antoine Potti was more spectacular because he took victory on his dry tyre.
So plenty of cars trying to get themselves to the end of the pit lane, ready to venture out. And of course the clock stops, but it doesn't reset. So you've lost effectively 4 minutes, and you will lose another 2.5 by doing another outlap. So really it's going to make it probably a 10-11 minute session.
Which means we won't necessarily see the fizzle that we saw in Q1, where we had lots of cars coming in 5 minutes before the end, because we're losing that 5 minutes in this reset. And it might well be that times are improved all the way to the flag. We did see times in. No, we didn't. We saw sectors in, but we didn't get enough to complete a lap. Look at that. We've still got cars coming into their pit boxes in the second of our pits. In the centre of the shot, the Newbridge car that was with Gus Bowers, his first appearance this year. And he shares that car with Lu Lik Ka from Macau,
where GT4 also has had a race for the last couple of years. There's always been the GT race, but they've had in the last couple of years a GT4 as well as a local GT3 race. And okay, there's a sort of non-GT4 comparable class that runs in tandem with it, but it just illustrates how it's picking up across the globe. Right, green flag is waved then. So Joel Doval, the race director, says it's time to go, and out they do go. You've got to feel a little bit for, in that session, Loic Villiger, because he had done 2 absolute bests and then copped a red flag. So, of course, you don't finish the lap, the time becomes nothing, and that could have been his best shot, we'll see. But now it's all about, yet again, getting track position.
And Villiger is one of those drivers that's under investigation for being fast as a bronze driver. Right. And I think over the years, the experience, he is actually classed as a silver driver in the FIA categorisation. He's been demoted to a bronze driver for GT4, which is an interesting step in itself. But now they're saying, well, hang on a second, actually, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Okay. And Villiger in the French Championship or in the European Championship over the last couple of years has been incredibly strong. I don't know what you do. Do you go, okay, I'll drive at 95% and try and stay bronze, or do you drive flat out and just move into silver and then you don't win a championship?
It is a very, very hard one to call, isn't it? Because there are some very, very good gentleman racers who are bronze because they are not professional drivers, but they're very, very handy behind the wheel. And there are some people that only do race driving or instructing or coaching to make a living and aren't as experienced and perhaps aren't as good, but yet because of what they do, they're categorised as silver and the types of racing that they've done. I can remember having a kind of, not say, but I was asked for some advice when Rob Collard came up for grading, because of all the years he'd done in touring cars. But he'd only ever really raced at 5 or 6 circuits. He'd never raced on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, for example, in all that time. And it was just it was a strange one. He had all of these years of racing, but only in a given type of car on a really narrow number of circuits.
Yeah.
But yet, he had raced and won and done all of these things. Anyway, to GT4, it's for the moment all about trying to find a lap, isn't it? And of course, when you get to the race and you've got an hour to get stuck in, you can make progress, but here you've got to be really brave to get through the traffic and find that clear track space. The BVT Mercedes there getting well up the curb as it dives through, number 28. That's the Muka Motorsport run car. Yeah,
from the German Championship this year. Both got 2 cars from Muka. Incredibly well-seasoned and well-known team that I think have a long partnership with that BWT Austrian brand. I'm sure we've seen that same brand on Formula 3 European cars.
They did, absolutely.
A few years
it's
ago.
Going back a long, long time to the Max Verstappen era and Esteban Ocon. They ran the BWT or BVT colours.
Water purification.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, obviously, an Alpine F1 sponsor.
Although to the chagrin of other sponsors, if you believe Business F1, because they claim that other sponsors don't like being on a pink car and pulled out. Whether that's true or not, or whether it's just a good story, who knows. But right old traffic jam here at the chicane as people try to slow right down, let the car ahead go. But all that does is create another bottleneck. So now we're on to a lap that counts, because this is the one where we'll get a time.
Joseph Knopp sharing with Rodrigo Almeida in the 28 machine. The 38 machine has, spinner from the little Porsche there, getting itself over the curb.
That's Joachim bolting. Wait a moment.
So that's rather ruined his first attempt, but plenty of time still to have another go. There's another funky livery on that machine. We saw those Overdrive Racing Bulgarian entered cars in Monza, but we didn't have them in Paul Ricard last time out.
I mean, even though this is a 7-kilometre long circuit, it's still very, very crowded indeed, isn't it? And right now, it's everybody trying to get themselves some clear track space. Big hurry on for the Porsche there, getting past the Aston Martin. We don't really have anything to go on as yet because we haven't had a proper lap time offered up in this session. So we're very nearly at halfway. Nobody has a lap time. It's going to be a real scramble to the end, isn't it?
And they're all going to be pushing. They're all going to be trying to find space on track, but of course they've all come out at the same time onto the circuit. So there's going to be an element of luck here. But I have to say that we've just seen at the front of shot the Audi getting away once more, with Benjamin Lariche in the first qualifying, Robert Consigny in the second qualifying. Again, he looks like he's got really clear track. All the Aston Martins here together haven't. They're all scrobbling over the same bit. Constantin Lachnau is now aboard his Beauvais liveried Aston Martin, which I still associate with Gus Bowers, but from last year.
Right, over the line goes Robert Consigny, as you say, in the Audi as well, which should be there or thereabouts. And absolute best first sector for Michael Lundstrass, who then goes to the top, 2:32.674. And Fabien Brichet is also looking racy. So you've got an Aston Martin 1-2, make that 3, because now up to third in the times has gone Jessica Bachmann, the Swedish driver in the brother and sister Aston Martin.
Yeah, they raced with two separate teams so far this year in two separate cars, but the same brand, the Bachmann brother and sister combination.
Up to the top of the times, Ricardo van der Ende, massively experienced peddler, excels in BMWs, sharing with Benjamin Lassène, who was quick last year. So van der Ende to the top of the times by just over a tenth of a second now. As up to Les Combes comes the long, long, long train of cars.
It really is a car on every part of the circuit, just waiting for that car with the flashing number 1 in its windscreen. L'Espace Bienvenue is the name of the team, interestingly, which means the welcome space in English. It's kind of a BMW Works livery on that car as well, and Van der Ende has always been very heavily associated to BMW.
And L'Espace Bienvenue also run not only in French GT, but the French Tourism Series as well, which is kind of TCR based. So very experienced as a team with BMWs, just as Van der Ende is as a driver, very, very close to overstepping the track limit line there, but he was just the right side of it as he comes then downhill. 9 minutes on the clock still.
Yeah, and that's another team we haven't seen so far this year.
So normally we do have a French GT round either on the same weekend or the previous weekend, because quite often the 24 hours comes after British GT, French GT have been here. That's event not happening this year. The British GT away round goes to Portugal for a change, and it therefore means that the French teams have just this one opportunity. Gabriele Piana then, in his BMW, personal best and absolute best, and there it is, the silver and blue BM. Oh, that's the wrong side of the line, I think. That could be a lap that disappears. Keep an eye on the message line on the screen. He's going to go fastest, Gabriele Piana, as he breaks the beam, and then the lap is bettered by Pavel Lefterov. 2:29.7 for Piana, 2:29.6 for Lefterov, but I'm waiting to see whether that lap stands for Piana. And Van der Ende here is on a mission, third fastest already, and slightly down in that middle sector.
Traffic ahead, but probably won't compromise the end of this lap. He's very much in touch. We've got Berke Bessler up in the top 5 in another of the BMWs, and there is no improvement on that lap. I don't think you can blame the traffic for that one, but certainly not the traffic at the end of the lap anyway. There is the fastest car, and that is the one. Wow, look at the damage to that car. That must have been off I think I saw that damage yesterday, so I think that's damage from free practice that hasn't been tidied up on the overdrive car.
Well, that's Pavel Lefterov,
Yeah.
who is at the moment fastest and could go quicker again, but that little bit of damage on the left front suggests that that's relatively recent.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting that he's also being almost towed around by the bonk BMW just ahead. So some drivers like to be pushed from behind, other drivers like to have a target to chase. And I wonder how much of an effect he's getting from the BMW ahead in terms of slightly learning a little bit more about where to place the car, when to brake, when to turn in.
I'm just looking to see whether there's been any reports of that car being in the walls in this session. Can't see that that's the case, so I think it's okay.
I would agree, though, that certainly that front end damage doesn't look like it could possibly be have left the paddock area like that.
Right, so there is Lefterov, and whether it was him in this session or whether it was his co-driver, which is Stefan Bostangiv, who had the incident, time will tell. But right now, Lefterov is suggesting that it's not phasing the car at all, because an absolute best, okay, he lost 95 thousandths in the second sector, but even so, it's still a good lap, this. Up through Blanchimont, heading to the end of the lap, and he's got time for certainly 2 more laps as well.
And no traffic ahead of him at the end of this one. We've been able to see how much he's been affected, and Piana got out the way and let him past. So he hasn't been chasing Piana in this final sector. The end of the second sector comes between Campus and Stavolo, where the new circuit joins the old, and he goes faster again. So 2:29.6. 2-3 is now the target, and then we've got a McLaren up in second position. That's impressive from Alex Denning. We've never seen a McLaren up that sharp, and he is now on the front row for this second race, and improves.
And he's only 33 thousandths behind as well. So Lefterov from Denning, then Bessler, Van der Ende, Konstantin Lachnauer is 5th. Stefan Lemeray, who could go around here with his eyes closed, is 6th fastest. Vincent Beltoise is 7th. Dante Raponge, whose elder brother Job is in the 24 hours, he is 8th. 9th is Etienne Shelley, and then 10th now is number 7 of Romain Carton. Right, the elite McLaren down the pit lane.
Comes in and goes, I can't do better than that.
And another Supra has had a big moment up at Les Combes, is that?
Yeah, I would agree.
Carl Brunhagen it is. Waits for a gap in the traffic, rejoins.
Lefterov lost that last lap time, so he did go faster by half a tenth, but it was then deleted. That's why it looked like Denning had improved, but actually he hadn't.
Right, so that is Brunhagen getting going. This is how it all... now, does this indicate contact? Does it ever? Big, big whack, and around he goes. That wasn't the Lefterov Porsche, but one in the same livery, pretty much. So Mikael Brunhagen, that's done the suspension, hasn't it? That looks like it's slightly crabbing.
Yeah, I think it was actually the Porsche that is in the Scandinavian GT4 section.
Right.
We followed at the end of Q1, the Pella-sponsored car. So that was 2 Scandinavian cars getting together. When considering there's only there's only 7 of them, that's quite impressive, really.
That's more than a Scandinavian flick, wasn't it? That was a big old whack. You also saw Joachim Welder's BMW on the flatbed being brought back. The session has got 4 minutes still to run. There's the Camaro, number 17, which is now Dante Raponge at the wheel of it. 6th fastest that car is now. It's one of the Silver Cup cars.
Yeah, so that's doing much better than we saw in Q1, down in 30-something. Haven't really seen the starring performances from that Camaro that we saw in previous years in GT4. Just hasn't quite got together as a partnership, but that's good. 6th spot right now.
It's its kind of circuit, though, isn't it? It's a real grunt and go kind of track, so it can stretch its legs. And it also makes a great noise, the Camaro. Still one of the all-time GT4 highlights, going back many, many years now, was watching Duncan Houseman in one of those cars in the wet at the Nürburgring, sideways onto the pit straight. All that power, not enough traction, it was wonderful to watch. Right, Denning in the pits, Van der Ende in the pits. That might be the end of the session for them. They might feel they've done enough now.
Christophe Amon aboard the 42 that's got pole for race 1 here, getting caught in traffic. Amon is another one of those AM drivers that is very, very strong. Moving to this team this year, to Santalok Junior team. I think it was Speed Car he was with last year. Yeah. And so, again, trying to campaign for the French Championship. Again, must be one of those drivers under investigation for his pace. But we haven't seen, he's only down in 20th position. Now, that's second in class. That's behind Loic Villagier. And so that's really all that matters, I suppose, for them in Pro-Am. And it is still a lot stronger than most of the AM competitors at the tail of the field. Laurent Villiger 18th overall, Amont 20th overall, and then Lopez Gutierrez in the 67 is 3rd in that class.
So that's Ricardo van der Ende, who is now out of the session, because even if he were to go back out, there's not enough time to do an outlap. Up to the end of a lap comes Etienne Shelley, who is 10th fastest, wants to improve, needs to improve really, and as he goes through, does not improve, stays 10th fastest in fact.
Starting to see people coming into the pits. The traffic will get less and less because of that. Fastest in AM, Alain Fuerte, but only just ahead of Ivan Jacoma. 14th and 15th they are, so as AMS, if you're looking at AMS, they are the top, and the AGS events, one of them goes into the wall, taps the wall. It is the 89, Nicolas Gomard.
Not had a good day, that car, has it?
39th position at the moment. 5th in class.
There's still a few that haven't even done a lap time, in fact, so with 90 seconds on the clock, it might be that they've lost lap times repeatedly. Joachim Welder's lap time never came because he was in the gravel. That bit we can account for. But the other one is number 44 of Jordan Wallace, the American. And that car has been out there, done 3 laps, but again, doesn't have a time next to it. And it's got 1 minute and 11 before the checkered flag goes out. Number 74, Aston Martin, drops downhill. The car of Konstantin Lachenau. He was a very successful campaigner in that car last year, and carrying on, the continuity is there.
If you ever fly into Geneva Airport, the Beauvais Chateau is quite a spectacular sight.
Oh, right, OK. Go there often, do you?
Well, fly over it often, yeah. Yeah, Beauvais Watches, the sponsor on that team.
So the Daniel Nilsson Porsche was the one that tagged the Supra of Mikael Brunhagen around. That's now being investigated by race control. Others running wide coming out of Blanchimont there, but as long as a tyre touches the white line, okay, that's the FIA rule. Let's have a look here at the Aston Martin, which got onto the grass, and then as the terrain changed from the grass to the tarmac, there was a bump, and that completely unsettled the car, but it didn't look to be going that quickly.
So that car was in the pits for 10 minutes at the start of the session. Parisi got out and did a lap, but the car body language didn't look quite right. I think they've got some kind of brake issue with that car. I mean, unless he was distracted and just didn't realise he was on the grass, that was a very odd incident.
Right, the flag is out then, and there are still quite a number of cars circulating, but the top 2 are already in the pit lane. There is 94 Cayman. That's another of the SRS Team Sorg Rennsport cars, and it is Felix Hersiger at the wheel of it. On it powers.
Top 15 all silvered cars.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the first of our AM competitors is Alain Fuerte, 16th in the AM category. But then, of course, even if you're in a Pro-Am category, you've got your AM driver in. So you could say best of the AMs overall is Fuerte, Jacoma, and then Loic Villiger, 19th now, best of the Pro-Am category cars, with Veruti in 20th on his own. So I think he gets a benefit from doing both sessions. He gets certainly more track time.
But you know exactly what the track is like, you know what the car is like.
Yeah.
And of course, behind my question earlier on as to whether you get a longer pit stop is that you have the advantage when you're back into your stint. And for example, another of the races here this weekend, Lamborghini Super Trofeo, that allows 1 or 2 drivers, it's up to you. But if you're on your own, you do a longer pit stop, only by 3 seconds, but that just takes away some of that advantage that you have rather than somebody who's fresh into the car.
There is Fuerte in the 55, sharing the car with Laurent Hergon, who's the developer of the Alpine brand, previously the Renault Sport brand, and he's the kind of the road car test driver and the hired gun if you're racing in the Alpine European Cup. So that is a great combination of drivers, Hergon and Fuerte, both now categorized specifically due to their age rather than necessarily due to their talents. I'll let you fill in the blanks on that one.
Silverstone Tourist Trophy winner though, Alain Fuerte, a long time ago.
And many a Le Mans start.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And.
Yeah. So this is the order then, provisionally, barring any penalties. And Pavel Lefterov is the hero of the session because he is the fastest in Q2 from Alex Denning. Really good effort, that. And then Berke Besler third. Ricardo van der Ende outpacing Konstantin Lachenau. Dante Repon sixth from Stéphane Lemre, Vincent Beltoise. Luc Ibanez ninth. And Robert Consigny ahead of Ruben Delsart. Etienne Shelley dropping to 12th from Romain Carton. Tom Emson next from Alain Fuerte. 15th, and as Ben was saying, the top 14 all silvers, the best of the AMs, Alain Ferté in that 15th. And looking further down the order, the Scandinavian entry, yet again having its fierce fight, but one or two drivers in the walls. And when they go racing this afternoon, one or two cars will have had a little bit of repair work. Right, so Pavel Lefterov tops the times. Two really good races are in prospect, that is for sure, here at Spa-Francorchamps in the GT4 European Series, now powered by Rapper Racing Club. And 60 minutes of action today, 60 minutes of action tomorrow with those two independent grids. So join us later on for the first GT4 race that will be coming up later in the afternoon. These are the highlights of the second session, which were interrupted very early when that car, Joachim Walder's BMW, got it all wrong coming out of Les Combes, found the gravel, found the tyre barrier, and the marshals found their red flags as a consequence. Laurent Hergon was giving over to Alain Ferté, who was pressing on. A good effort by Alex Denning's McLaren, put that to second, and then a big contact turned around Mikael Brunhagen after he was assaulted there by Daniel Nielsen in the Porsche, and that is under investigation. Pavel Lefterov, the man that went to the top of the times then to be fastest here in the GT4 European Series Q2. Spectacular stuff from this huge entry, and although Lefterov's car looks a little bit dog-eared around that front left corner, it is still very rapid indeed. But that's pole position for tomorrow's race. Action to come later on in the day. But for now, from Spa, from Ben Constanduros and David Addison, it's goodbye.